in which good fractality charge would be condensed.
If I might suggest that the confusion is resolved when electrical engineering terms are applied. What's called life force is when there is lots of circulating inertia when the plasma or charge or quantum foam is fractal. So you get lots of inertia available, and we call that life force. Mm-hmm. What Wilhelm Reich called Dor or dead orgone or death force, for example, when you focus green light, is an electric field which is cubic, which is the green angle, which opposes the distribution of charge. So charge distribution efficiency is always what allows life force, and therefore what allows plasma circulation and mind. Mm-hmm. So the orgone accumulator was a crude example of what now should be called a phase conjugating dielectric, and that can cause the charge, the plasma, the quantum foam to become centripetal and compress that stored inertia in an electric field symmetry, which is more fractal and therefore allows circulation and therefore connectivity. Mm-hmm. So dead orgone is just a name for a place where charge circulation is inhibited and therefore mind is inhibited. That's why looking at what they call negative green energy, which we now know is a 90-degree angle of photon, which is opposite to phase conjugate and therefore deathly, is simply an example of charge distribution prevented.
But why would the same accumulator accumulate both forces?
It actually, when the plasma is rendered centripetal in an environment full of, we could say, misqualified energy or plasma that's out of symmetry, you concentrate the bad stuff, basically. So, for example, if you take a strong negative ion wind generator, you can use it to push infection out of the body. But if you try to do it inside a metal room, you make it worse, not better. You can make the body centripetal, but if the body is centripetal in an environment that's electrically unhelpful, then you're actually gaining poison. So, becoming centripetal alone isn't the only job. The fact is, becoming centripetal in an environment where you can then inhabit the environment is the only way to do it. In other words, having bliss in a metal building is never going to feel good, because during bliss you implode, and if you're inside a poisonous environment, you're sucking poison into your body.
Wow.
Now, another aspect of the fasting thing you presented, it's nice that you make the connection between the anger and the loss of food, but I suggest you see that in electrical terms. We know well that almost any hypoglycemic will basically want to kill someone as soon as their blood sugar drops. It's very common. Mm-hmm. Now, that's an example of anger at loss of nutrition. As opposed to Jasmuheen, who teaches people how to live without food. You learn a process of being barefoot in nature, deep breathing, and being in service, where you're able to attract enough charge that you don't need food, and then you don't feel anger. And what you say, transmuted into love. Mm-hmm. What you mean by that is be transmuted into a process of healthy embedding. Uh-huh. Love is a name for just simply embedding in that which circulates charge and therefore nourishes. So the electric skill of learning how to fast is to learn how to absorb charge. It's pretty impossible to do. Jasmuheen failed in an air-conditioned room in a metal building. You can't do it.
Wow, that explains so much. Amazing. Okay. Once I was experimenting with monoatomic particles, and one method where I tried to do that is, through creating a vortex in a magnetic field. But there was a very interesting observation that happened, experience that happened, which was as soon as the vortex accelerates, the magnets, some of the magnets which were really glued to the surface of the container, they just were shot to a distance meters away. I would love your comment on that.
Where the vortex gets spin dense, obviously there's the inertia to move. So the relationship between the magnetic flux and the water, the hydrodynamics, becomes systematic when the vortex compresses, becomes centripetal and spin dense, I suppose. Seems like a simple answer, actually.
Is it that when water starts accelerating in a vortex, it creates a very high voltage, which creates a strong magnetic field opposing the magnets that were attached to the container?
That's a nice way of asking the question. The voltage generated in a water vortex, which Schauberger built as an electric generator, which was a functional source of power, is dependent upon the electric symmetry of the water and largely related to the piezoelectric doping of the water with the right phase conjugate trace minerals. So if the water is properly phase conjugate, which is to say has the right trace minerals to make it electrically piezoelectric, then if the geometry of the vortex angle is correct, there will be a voltage difference between the center bottom and the outside periphery, which is a source of power as an electric generator, and that voltage comes from gravity.
Yeah.
So if that effect is amplified in the correct environment where, for example, in the implosion lab in the UK, they're spinning that vortex at 50,000 RPM and it's inside a silver-coated toroidal domain, then in fact you have real implosion possible.
What's the relation between that and the biological vacuum that Schauberger spoke about?
There is only one symmetry that makes implosion possible, and it happens in air, in water, in magnetism, in pine cones. Symmetry is always the same. I think I vaguely remember. I mean, implosive collapse can be triggered when the seed of electric symmetry is correct, and the seed can come from multiple sources. But the symmetry that does it is always the same.
How about the temperature gradient in a vortex? Is that how necessary is that in order to form the right produce?
Well, there are many clues there, and I suppose it's a complicated question, but one nice clue is that as soon as the vortex begins spontaneously electrically getting colder is a pretty good indication that it's beginning to implode.
Okay. How about the work of Ruth Drone and similar works? I've tried that. I haven't got it to work correctly so far, but I understand the concept, how it goes. I would love your comment about that.
The work of?
Ruth Drone.
Was that Ruth Drone? Could you spell that?
RUTHDROWN.
I don't think I'm familiar with that work.
She's one of those amazing figures, and some of the stuff she did is creating a device. Her work was somewhere between radionics, science, and spirituality. It was amazing, really. The first device she worked with concerned, for example, taking a cell, taking saliva, for example, from a patient, putting the saliva on a plate, and then just testing the frequencies available that is embedded in this saliva. And through that, she would know exactly what disorders are present in this patient, and she would be also able to somehow, broadcast healthy frequencies to him, either by connecting the device to his abdomen, or by doing it even through a distance, through radionics. Something else she did is taking photographs of complete systems through a part of it. For example, through that single specimen of saliva, she would be able to make a photograph of the complete body.
Right. Yes, I was familiar with a lot of the people who I see are associated with Drown, like Trevor Constable and a lot of the radionics people I knew. And I see nice discussions of how this, what I call mitogenic radiation, is communicated. I think the literature, in science, this has generally been called mitogenic radiation, which means the frequency spectra within which cells communicate. And some of it we know is ultraviolet, but it's by definition broad spectral. I think what much of the literature failed to understand was the nature of how phase conjugate fields communicate inherently, which is to say that phase conjugation perfected is broad spectral. Can you hang on just 1 second here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. When it rains, it pours around here. That's the Australian group working on the hydrogen project.
Amazing.
So anyway, in summary, there's two issues to be investigated from the point of view of science there. One is the known frequencies of mitogenic radiation in the sense of Cleve-Baxter and secret life of your cells. And the other is the nature of a phase conjugating dielectric and phase conjugate fields in general. What makes them self-organize and what makes them broad spectral by definition? And once we understand more about that, then you can look at the Ruth Drown kind of work of radionic cellular communication as an electrical engineer, which is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Hulda Clark's synchrometer device?